right, I think we have started. All right. All right. Good day, everyone, everywhere, anywhere, whatever the time you are watching, whatever the time you are listening. I am Pumelele. I am one of the co-founders of iFather Figure Initiative. On the call, we've got Asisithi and my other co-founder busy with recording this session for you as we try and tackle the conversation around quality time and activities to enhance the bond between fathers and children. On the topic, or rather in the couch today, is an old friend, Asisithi Sejosengoe. Ni Mbeu. I went to varsity with her. Who is Asi? We'll park that conversation for later. But first, for those who are starting to view our conversations online, what is iFather Figure? So iFather Figure Initiative is an initiative that endeavors to create a better father experience for our children. Who are children? Could be your niece, your nephew, your daughter or your son, your granddaughter or grandson. So if you are a male person who fits the character of being a father figure, this is for you. But ke asibashiyi bodwa omama who are they give birth to the kids. So also in the spirit of Women's Month in South Africa this month, it is Women's Day. So we thought, you know what? Let's have a conversation with a professional who is also a mother to her own child, right? So that's why we have that conversation here. So what I want us to talk about is first, before we speak to Mrs. Asi, let's briefly have a conversation around quality time activities. We had another session where we had 4 fathers who came and gave us their experiences in terms of what they do with their children, intentionally or unintentionally, and it was a nice conversation. You can find a link in the below description or up there, depending on where you're watching. But it gave us some perspective, and there were some unresolved issues that we thought, let's bring someone that we know, that we trust, who can tell us about this. I've got to Asi on this conversation platform. Asi, you have a bio. I'll read it. It's very brief, but I want you to tell us who you are and those things. And then we can kick off the conversation. I won't read the bio, but I will just say it. Asisithi Sejosengoe is a clinical psychologist in private practice. She is practicing in East London, Buffalo City area in the Eastern Cape. She qualified, she did her undergrad at Nelson Mandela, now Metropolitan University, or Nelson Mandela University, then further on with the University of Forte. Right. She's a mother. And let me park it there. Asi, what's your bio from a human perspective, not from LinkedIn?
Yes, these bios, I only have a bio because apparently that's how these professional and academic spaces need. But very shortly, my name is Asisithi Sejosengoe. I am a counseling psychologist, actually, category registered as a counseling psychologist, not clinical.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
Yes, I am practicing in East London in private practice, but I do locum at some of the private hospitals here in East London. A mom to 1 daughter, an aunt to 3, two nephews and 1 niece. And I am, what else? A friend, businesswoman, and most importantly, I think I forgot to mention that I'm a wife. I am married. I've been married for almost 8 years. This is our 8th year of being married. It's been a privilege to live the life that I live, and also an honor to have been invited here. iFather Figure. I say that our colors are matching. I'm wearing a green scrub, and I've got my green flowers at the back and with your green colors. So this was meant to be. That's who I am.
Ekos Kakolu, thanks, Asim, and we appreciate your time. Again, time is a precious commodity. You joining us here to share your perspective professionally and as a woman and as a mother, to help empower us as fathers, because we're not on this journey alone. There are mothers to the children, whether or not we are related to them, in terms of we staying together, we're married, or we have a blended family situation. But this platform seeks to create a better father experience for our children. So it's for men who are fathers who have intention, or rather who have intent to being active in their childhood's life. All
Mm.
right. Um, you saw the theme, or the topic that we want to decipher. If you could break it down in terms of your understanding, and then we can have a meaningful conversation around it. It's
Mm.
quite lengthy,
Yeah.
and let me share it with you again. Quality time and activities to enhance the bond between fathers and
Yeah.
children. What is your
Mm.
take on that?
Yeah.
Yes. Mm.
Pumela, I think sometimes as human beings, we tend to want to overcomplicate easy, or we tend to find simple things and make them complex because we want to come from a level of depth, or maybe come from a level of intellectualizing everything. But essentially, quality time is as simple as taking a walk with your kids, or going to the park, or running your errands whilst you are with your children. But before we get into the activities themselves, I would like to first mention that fatherhood in general is decisional for most men, that it doesn't come as have to situation where they have no choice but to be fathers, unlike with the mothers, because when you fall pregnant, you have no choice but to be a mother. And also, mothers are privileged from a point of that biologically, from the time they find out they're pregnant until they give birth, they've got this unintentional, organic, natural bond that they have with their children without doing much to establish the bond, because they are essentially living together, which is something that fathers are not privy to, or don't have the same privilege and honor to be biologically connected like that with their children. And so while we're still pregnant with our children, the bond is growing. We have ways in which we communicate. We know when the baby isn't kicking. We know that if we eat a certain flavor of ice cream, they will jump for joy while they're still in our bellies. So that speaks to the depth of the connection that mothers have from the word go. And so, therefore, when I spoke about how fatherhood is a decisional thing for fathers, it mainly just I want to highlight that becoming a father relies on you making a decision that you are going to see it through, that you are going to father the children, or father the child, and be present. So it's a choice that you make, and so therefore a choice that you honor, to be responsible, to participate in the parenthood of it all, and be involved in the process. And so that's what I mean when I talk about fatherhood being decisional, and also the differences in terms of why mothers sometimes can tend to be more bonded, well knowing of their children, and have a very strengthened relationship with their children, because of the stuff that happened biologically and physiologically before even the child is born. And so therefore, being present, being a father who's decided that they want to be involved in their children's life, sometimes I want to highlight and just mention also that it's highly dependent on the mom allowing that to happen, because mom has
Mm.
to give way for the dad to be involved, has to give
Mm.
platform for the dad to be involved, and allow the father to continue with their decision, and therefore honoring that
Mm.
decision.
Hectic,
So that's
right?
what I think. So those are, I think I made sense, because so that's what I think in terms of the bond and how that happens, as well as the activities, just like building into what then fathers could do to strengthen the bond that they have with their children.
Hey, Kuning, Asi. So you mentioned the fact that the father needs to be intentional. They need
Yeah.
to decide that they're going to be a father. As a male person, you can have children, but you may not be a father to them. So iqala up on the presence part.
Mm.
Okay. Then you spoke about mothers being what I could say primary caregivers to abantwana. For some reason, in my field where I work, we updated the policy around maternity leave. It's not maternity leave, it's parental leave, because we've decided that the father or the mother may decide to be the primary caregiver. And therefore, if they are, even if it's a male person, but if they are a primary caregiver, they'll get the same benefits of maternity for 4 months.
Love that.
So no, I won't mention any names, but it gave rise to the fact that there can be fathers who want to be intentional about it, right? Then you make mention of uh, those types of activities. One of the questions that came from our fathers in one of the sessions around quality time, he asked us, guys, what is the minimum amount of time I can spend with my kids? I'm a father. I wake up, I leave the house at 6, right? They are still asleep. I leave work at 6, I get home at 8, they are almost asleep. I don't have time. So that's one of the reasons that sparked that. So if you could, are you able to provide us, is it 1 hour? Is it 30 minutes? What is the minimum that you need?
Look, let's not quantify it in terms of how much time, but let's qualify the few minutes that you do spend with your children to make sure they are of the best quality. And what I mean by that, you make it meaningful and you make it mean something so that the impact of you having spent time with them lies with them and stays with them even the following day. So simple things like making sure that if you're coming home at 6 p.m. and your children are going to bed at 8, how about you do the story time or the night prayer or the evening prayer, whatever you do at the end of the day, just before you put your kids to bed. And that is highly dependent on how much time is available. So it could be 5 minutes of saying, depending also on the age of your children. So some of these activities you will have to adjust to make them age appropriate. So for instance, I think let's speak about something kids from like the age of 2, where you could read stories and you could have a conversation around the story, where you also allow them to choose the favorite story that they want you to read.
How?
So
They are only 2.
So you give them 2 choices, like which book do you want to read here? And they'll choose the one with the picture of the lion or the one with the picture of the waves and whatever else, based, because children are not necessarily choosing books based on the content, but based on how you read it to them. So if during the time in which you read, you make sounds, you change the tones of your voice to portray the different animals or whatever characters are in the book. If you make it fun and you roar when the lion roars, kids are enjoying that and they're having fun, and at the same time building a relationship with you. So that's why I'm saying let's not qualify it, but quantify. I mean, let's not quantify, but qualify. So it could be 5 minutes where at the end of your reading your book, if you are a religious person, you then say a prayer or 2. And then also if they are at an age where they could have a conversation, you just check in. How are you? How was school? What happened at school today? I'm changing the question because sometimes kids struggle as answering how was school because school was fine. But when you ask what happened at school, they are more able to then articulate this happened, that happened. I shared my lunch with so and so, the teacher did that, which essentially answers the question of how was school for you. So really, I don't think let's complicate it to a matter of, it's 1 hour. So now you become such a robot routine father where you say, I must clock in 1 hour with my kids or 5 minutes. So it's about the quality of the activity or whatever you do with your children, and however much time you may have.
Hectic. I want to further probe you. You mentioned, and it's in line with our conversation, right? You mentioned that the issue of the bond, right? The child by default has a bond with the mother because the mother is the carrier of the child, and we are asked like what is happening with the baby, and then the child is born. Then the father is there. The father decided to be there. Therefore, the father is taking initiatives, right?
Yeah.
I watched some of your videos. I think you said one of your videos mentioned 9 things dads can do to help the mother
I
off.
remember that.
Or, so that was kind of exciting for me. And I'm
Yeah.
not too sure if you can still remember those. Like, if you could just choose 1 or 2 of those things, on the issue of the bond, on the part of the bond, what are some of those 2 things that you think do enhance the relationship between a father and the child? I'll give you a hint. I like having bath time with my daughter. I don't have a problem going fast. So
Yeah.
what are some of those that you have suggested in your previous video?
Yes, sure. I like that. Thank you for watching the video. I think I shot it when 2 years ago. I've never gone back and watched it, but I do know what I wrote. I mean, what I said on the video. You see, fatherhood is being intentional with spending time and doing the things that could be seen as maybe trivial by the other person. And it's mostly reliant again on the mother allowing you to do that and trusting you to do that, because for mothers, we need to trust that you will do it properly, and that you're not going to hurt the baby in the process of doing that. And I think one of the biggest ones is bath time, because it's such a lengthy process. It could be 30 to 45 minutes where you're just playing at the same time. You're not rushing the process, and also you're getting to bond with the child. And another one of them is doing chores with them. If they are at an age where you could take them to the shops, because whilst you're with them, not only are they learning, getting to know you as an individual, but they're also picking up social development techniques, or maybe ways in which they grow. So socially they're developing, and also they're learning, picking up life skills that they could then implement in their own lives when they themselves are older. So you're talking to them through the process of buying bread, that, oh, we're not going to buy this bread, it's a little bit more expensive, we're going to go for that one. Or we're not going to buy this bread because it's white, we're going for the healthier version of the bread. All of those things are enhancing the relationship between you and your child. So something as simple as doing your chores and running your errands with your children. And another one of them is going out to the park with them and allowing them to choose the activity of what they're going to do. Are you guys going to be kicking ball? Yeah.
The park, like what is happening behind me here?
Oh, the
Going to the
park.
zoo. Yeah.
Oh, yes. So the park, the zoo. And I think the biggest one that I often find with fathers is that although they are doing these activities with their children, they themselves are not mentally and psychologically present, because they disturb, or they are disrupted by either running an activity with their children while also being on a Zoom call, on a Zoom meeting, or they're on social media, or they're responding to emails. So the biggest one of that, I think it would be important for fathers in a way that establishes and enhances the relationship, is being present. So get off your phone, get off your laptop, and be present in the moment. And again, it doesn't have to be a long period of time if you know that you have meetings and things to do, because we know we're busy. So be present whilst you are doing the activities, and not do the activities just so that you could say you've ticked the box. That's also part of the quality of the spending time.
You mentioned again, a piece of our theme is around early childhood development. You mentioned going there to them to the shops so they can learn social skills.
Yeah.
Also, you mentioned reading books with them, so that they could learn language and
Yeah.
speech.
Yes.
One of the fathers, and that father is also me, around books. Ne? They mentioned that they initially started reading the Bible to the kids, and their kids were bored because they don't understand the Bible and Jesus and God, so they got bored. So they changed and decided to use picture books.
Yeah.
So they see colors, they see animals, and all those things.
Mm.
How important is those educational type of activities to a child? What do you think it helps? Like you mentioned that if there's a lion, roar.
Yeah.
How important is those gesturings and those things in from an early childhood development perspective?
Very important, because I mean, kids learn through mainly their senses. So getting books with colors, it will stimulate some of their sensory in terms of auditory as well as visual perspective, as well as sometimes there's books you find that are thick and got like a different type of texture to it where kids can touch. And so also making sure that even the sensory integration part of the development is touched on. And there's actually research, that shows that kids who grow up having parents who are present in their homes grow up to be children who are well-rounded in terms of their confidence, in terms of their intellect, because they grow up in a house where there's two perspectives, mom and dad's perspective. So if you believe in low-fat milk and mom believes in full-fat milk, then they have to get an understanding behind what is the reason behind those two separate beliefs, which in turn gives them an opinion or maybe allows them to have a choice and understanding why people would choose two different milks, for example. They grow up to be more open-minded, and they also have like a great emotional and physiological well-being. So not only just books, but taking into the conversation. So that's why it's very important for both parents to have conversations with their kids, to share what's in their heart, what they've been thinking about, the reasoning behind the decisions, and doing away with don't jump on the couch and when a child asks why and you say, I say so. It takes away from their development. It takes away from their curiosity as well, because kids learn through being curious, because then they collect all these bits and pieces of information, which then boost their intellect. So yes, very important. Texture, color, allow the kids to learn the different kinds of animals. And you could even take it up a notch and do the whole hierarchy of animals. The king of the jungle. Why do we say that they are the king of the jungle? So that even in school, they can then be confident enough to say such things and spark such conversations with the teachers as well as their classmates. So
Hectic. Okay. My daughter is almost 3. Ne?
yeah.
Someone said to me, and please comment on this if this is incorrect information.
Okay.
Someone said to me, yeah, now she has crawled and now she can walk. She's moving away from potty training. So now we're now dealing with personality now. You need to assess what her personality is. So how important is understanding your child's personality when you want to establish a relationship with them? Because do they have a personality? I mean, they are just kids.
They do. They do have a personality. I think personally, I started seeing my child's personality at about a 1.5-year-old. I think also maybe because I was a lot more attentive to it. And in psychology, we call it parenting mindfully. Yes. So, so when you're being mindful, it means that you're not putting a blanket way of doing things or parenting to all of your children, or maybe putting a blanket statement to all 3-year-olds and saying 3-year-olds behave like this, but recognizing that parenting, first of all, is never ever like set in stone. So children will be different, and what makes them different, and personality can come from, like, maybe when what would be an example? They're quite loving and affectionate. That could be something that could be part of their personality. They respond well when you shout or when you speak in a much softer voice because they're not feeling threatened. Whereas other kids will want you to shout because that's how they receive communication. And so also being flexible in your understanding that in as much as they've got personality, for you to honor that and make sure that you're nurturing it, to not be very rigid in your parenting style and making sure that they do what you want them to do, but allowing them that opportunity to choose stuff. So allowing your 3-year-old to, like, which sweets do you want here, and not deciding for them, because in subsequently to you doing that, you're also building their autonomy. So yeah, so parenting mindfully, recognizing and knowing, even if maybe you're not necessarily aware of what their personality is, but knowing that they have one. And so you will try your best to try and nurture it so much that it develops if it's not yet there.
No, as no, Wenzaka cool. I think, remember, this conversation is on the backdrop of fathers giving questions, or rather providing questions to us. Well, when you have a professional or someone who can speak to, please ask them these questions. Yeah, bon.
Mm,
So the even though I haven't asked you these questions, we've already answered them in our conversation.
yeah.
One of the questions that you've already answered that came from one of the fathers is, how do kids build relationships? Why does the mother seem to have better relationship with their children than the father?
Mm,
You've answered that by the fact that the bond starts from inception, if I'm using the right English, then birth, then the
yeah.
father being intentional and being there, deciding that they need to be there. That's one of the
Mm,
questions that came from the fathers. Another question that came from the fathers is, what are the indicators that parents, in brackets, fathers, do not have a relationship with their kids? So
mm,
when fathers don't have a relationship with their kids, what are some of the indicators? I think you've partly mentioned that
mm,
around when there's both parents involved in the parenting of the child, there is a well-rounded and a wholesome individual. But when there
mm,
isn't, what then?
yeah.
What can we say? What are some of the indicators of not being present in the child's
Mm,
life?
sure. Let me go to the first question and just expand a little bit and
Mm,
maybe give a few examples.
mm,
Um, Children are not very much conversationalists,
mm,
because one, largely because of the lack of their vocab, they don't have a lot of words to play around with.
mm,
And so a lot of times how they build relationship is based on how they feel, and also looking out for the reaction or the response of the parent. So they gauge whether or not they could build a relationship with you based on whether they can trust you, whether
mm,
they feel secure with you. And if
mm,
that, all of that you've done is consistent, so it's not in, out, in, out. So they will have a really good relationship with you if you are a consistent parent.
mm,
Also, being warm, being kind, and loving can also strengthen the relationship. I often speak about how you could still be firm but kind,
mm,
firm but loving, disciplinarian, but also very kind and loving in your approach. And a lot of times, maybe even with our society, we've grown up with fathers being like they very hardcore. And
mm,
there's no love in their tone, there's no kindness in their tone. So much so that children will tend to feel that I'm not loved here, because if you did, you wouldn't speak to me like you're trying to break me. So that's very
mm,
important to be aware of that. And so elements of then having that quality relationship of the parent-child relationship is safety, mutual respect, the flexibility that I talked about, and also the parenting mindfully. And I think unconditional love, unconditional acceptance, embracing your child's individuality and not wanting to do the same thing that you did with your firstborn, copy and paste, not wanting them to behave the same way as the next door child's behavior. So, for example, Lando yoba utheni wena ungakhe wenze as so and so does, the
mm,
comparison. So that dishonors the child and it communicates with them that they themselves, as they are, have not been accepted and therefore they are not unconditionally loved by you.
mm.
So that's how you build a relationship. I don't know if you want to say something or comment before I go to the indicators.
Yes. One of our fathers, around the issue of discipline that you mentioned, okay, yeah, there's a lot. Okay, one of the fathers said for them, right,
Yeah.
how to build relationship because the child is not speaking yet, right?
Mm,
The one of our fathers said at some point he took off his shirt, took
mm.
off his child's shirt, and then
Oh,
hugged them.
yes,
You
skin to
know,
skin. Love
skin
that.
to skin,
Mm,
hug them. And then that feeling was amazing for him. And the
mm,
child felt safe with
mm,
him. That's a
mm.
physical bond and also maybe an emotional bond, right?
Yeah.
Another father around the question of discipline said, don't be manipulated by umntwana. And also tend to overcompensate for maybe for when you are not there.
Mm,
Discipline is discipline, and you
yeah.
need to be, but you said be kind, but be firm,
Mm.
I don't do this, etc. So yeah, that was my comment of when
Yes.
you
Oh, I love
posted
those. I love both of them.
it. Yeah, and then the indicators,
Yeah. Sure.
versus presence and absence.
Mm. Okay, so for fathers, when I was thinking about the whole fatherhood scenario and
Mm,
fatherhood being decisional, I want to just go back to that.
mm,
Whether you decide or choose to be present in your child's life, you always have to be aware that whatever decision you've made communicates acceptance or rejection to your child. So therefore, if their existence was rejected by their father, i.e., not choosing to be fathers or choosing to parent their child, that is your child's first experience with rejection. And so, therefore, that's something that they live with and grow to even start building, using it as a foundation of how they then go about establishing relationships of their own. And
mm,
so that's why we have now children who, or adults actually, who struggle with male figures, whether it's too familiar, or maybe they're scared of them, or there's anxiety associated with that, or there's feelings of Instagram will call it the fatherhood wound.
mm,
So that's why we've got such things, is because of that first decision that from your inception you were rejected, and therefore it sets you up for even maybe, let's say, failure or success in your own future relationships. So that's one of the biggest indicators on a psychological perspective. And then I think simply, if your child isn't feeling like there is a relationship with between you, the parent-child relationship,
mm,
one of those indicators would be the lack of their display of emotion. If they're not able to display their emotions to the fullness, then that would mean that has been a break in the establishment of that relationship. And so
mm.
therefore you find children that they will pretend to be okay when they are not okay, which also simultaneously is I don't know if you know the term people pleasing.
Yes.
That people pleasing is often birthed in parent pleasing.
I'm offended because I'm also a people pleaser. So am I being analyzed now?
I did
But
not
I
know
get
that.
you.
I
I
did not
get
know
you.
that about you. But it's one of the biggest indicators, and people and children please for many reasons. And one of them, though, I think the umbrella of it all is acceptance, wanting to be accepted and loved unconditionally. So they will do whatever they have to do in order to be loved and accepted by you. And essentially, that is what people pleasing is. Um, so that's one of them, and also not coming to you to discuss their thoughts, their feelings, or their opinions, because they are fearful of how you will react as the parent. And also, if they know that mostly your feedback has been critical and labeling. So critical as in awucingi wena uphambene umuncu, you are stupid. So if there's such language that you use to communicate with your with your children, so obviously there will be a gap in or maybe difficulty in establishing that relationship. Yeah, and I don't know if you want me to touch on the overall complete absence of fathers.
Please do.
Okay, but you guys are a father figure, so meaning you are present.
We are present, or rather, you would rather not say, because we are making an intention.
You are, and I really, really, when you called me up, I was like, I
Mm,
love this initiative because it's changing the narrative of what fatherhood is.
mm,
Fathers who are deciding that they will be involved in their children's life and go the extra mile of saying,
mm.
how do we then best shape and structure this relationship with our children so that we make sure that it's good for them. So yeah, I don't think we should talk about it because it's Zaimosha.
Simosha. Good. All right. A bit of a profile around our fathers. Again, these are people who volunteered, who opted in to join our group, right?
Okay.
Currently, we're sitting at 96 people in the group, right? But of
Okay.
those 96, there are mothers as well. But if
Yeah.
I were to count the fathers particularly, it's about 60
Mm,
plus fathers, right?
sure.
So our fathers are diverse. And what we appreciate is that we don't want to assume there are certain life stages in terms
Mm,
of there are fathers who are not married to the mothers of their children,
mm,
but they are dating, or there is an intention maybe of courtship. That is the type of father. Second father, married, committed, but works in a different province, long distance type of
mm,
father. Third father, blended family, had a child with this other woman. Things didn't work out from a relationship perspective, but maintains the relationship with the child, has started another family, is married on this side, but wants to be active fathers to the first family as well. So one of our fathers asked, how do we deal with the issue of blended families? But that's
mm.
a conversation for another day.
I was
Uh,
about to say that.
That's a conversation for another day. But the ask was these activities, the
Mm,
quality of them, etc. So where I'm going is, you mentioned intention, right? How important is, one, having a routine with your child? Two, how important is the intention behind an activity?
mm,
To what extent is that important? Is it just, I think you mentioned it, but maybe we can elaborate on
mm,
routine and intention around the
mm.
activity.
Quite important because firstly, routine equals consistency.
Mm,
It means that I can trust you. It
mm,
means that I can rely on you. And so
mm,
therefore I will have what psychologists would call a secure attachment with you. So on days or times or moments or seasons where you are unavailable, I will have an understanding that it's unlike you. So therefore it's not communicating that I've now been rejected by you, because I
mm,
know you. I know that you want to spend time with me. I know that your heart and the intention behind wanting to spend time with me as your child is because you love me and you've accepted me. And so therefore routine is quite important, and the consistency of that routine even more important. And I would even argue and say that the routine is far more important than the actual activity, because I
mm,
don't think it matters much what you do with your children, but the spending of the time and
mm,
making sure that when you do spend that time, you are emotionally, psychologically present as you are physically present.
mm,
That they can rely on you to have a conversation and hold the conversation until
mm,
its completion. That they can trust you, that they could bring up some of the things that they've been questioning about themselves, and knowing that they're not going to be rejected, they're not going to be labeled, or no, or even be criticized.
mm,
So routine, again, very, very much important. And the activities, again, I think I'll go back to what I said, that it's important for us to not overcomplicate things. Whatever you can do at the capacity in which you have, do it, but make sure that you involve your children. And
mm,
the involvement of your children, make sure that there's words behind it. So communicating, and that's why I made the example that you say it out loud, that we're choosing this over that, or I'm doing this over that because of A, B, C, and D, because that's the only way in which you can really communicate your intention and your heart and your love to kids.
mm,
So making sure that behind whatever activity you choose to do, be it going to the mall with them and allowing them to shop whatever clothes they want to shop, having communicated before that this is how much we're spending because this is how much debt has.
budget. Yeah, yeah.
Yes, so that we avoid the throwing of tantrums, and we avoid saying dad doesn't love me because he didn't want to buy me A, B, C, and D. So having that communication and being clear of what you can and cannot do as the father, and also incorporating positive affirmation during your activity. So if you've decided to go for movies, discuss what the movie was about and praise your child for having paid attention. Something very, simple and easy to have done, but make sure that they know that you see them. And now that I'm mentioning this word see, there's recently a I don't know what it was, but I was reading something, and I
Mm,
realized that it's so important for us as parents to be constantly asking, is my child being seen by me? So meaning, am I locking eye, what do you call this?
eye
Eye contact.
contact. Mm,
Yes, eye contact with them. when they come into my room, do I put whatever I was doing down and be focused on them? Do they feel seen by me? And then secondly, do they feel heard by me? So when they're coming to me to talk to me about what's been bothering them, or even talk gibberish, because children sometimes will just come in and speak nonsensical stuff. But do they feel heard by me? And then the biggest one, do they feel loved by me? So what, in which ways, in which the ways in which I behave, the things I do, how I react, are they feeling loved by me? So even with your activities, you could always create activities that will answer some of these questions, where they will make your children feel seen, heard, and loved. And then I think also something that we often take for granted is cooking with your children. I think fathers now, they do cook. So being in not that will help. So they could help with like the cleaning of the pills. So they know that they have to clean that. They take out the spices and put them back. They take out the plates, and they just help with the maybe the keep up of the kitchen to make sure that it's clean. So it's doing those chores, running your errands with them. And if you have an opportunity to take them to work with you so that they could see what you do, be involved in some way. If you don't work in an environment that could be potentially dangerous to your children, but so that they could also be exposed on that side of you. And I think also it's quite important to structure your whatever activity to answer the question, who is my dad? You know, so that they get to know you as an individual, so that they have a sense of what your identity is. And so that when they do grow up, what I've seen is that they take so much pride from saying, my dad did it like this, or I do this like my dad, on fuzile. You know, it grounds you, that thing of knowing what your particular act or characteristic or trait that you have was birthed or taken from a specific parent that you have. So I don't think we should be overcomplicating activities. Do what you can with the capacity that you have, but making sure you spend quality time. And the quality of it all isn't about necessarily how many hours, how many minutes, but it is about the engagement that you have, how present you are, how communicative you are, how much you will go to the extra length and explain the reason behind some of your decisions, the reason behind of the things you don't allow in the house. So the rules of the house, why do we have such rules? You know, it's to protect you. What do you mean by that? And et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, so having those conversations. And I think one of the biggest ones actually that I want to mention, one that's important, is also important. I think all of them are big, but you know, I'll keep saying one of the biggest ones is eating dinner at a table. Sitting down and eating dinner together. No phones, no TV. Maybe the music could be playing or the radio could be playing, but just sit down and eat together as a family. That's where some of the conversations will come, and that's where some of the conversation maybe will be birthed.
Wow. I think our fathers, when they're after watching this, they'll be very empowered. And I also want to wrap up in the interest of time.
Oh, I didn't see the time.
No, the conversation is flowing so good, eh? But you know, for me, or rather for us as iFather Figure Initiative, right? Why did we call you as a professional here to be a friend of iFather Figure? In one of our safe spaces, I think one of the first calls that we did with fathers, which we did not record because it's a safe space, there were issues that were raised by fathers that were bigger than us, or that we cannot resolve as myself and Mandilake under iFather Figure Initiative, because it's out of our scope. And we felt that from our networks, who can we ask, one, to share perspective, and two, possibly collaborate with, so that should we pick up these things, or should we want to assist one of our fathers, who can we refer them to? So my ask is that, where can our fathers find you? Where are you? What are your contact details? Do you do virtual or in person? if you could just spell yourself, rather your profession and your
Yes.
entity to us so that we can share it with our fathers.
So I'm physically based in East London, but I do virtual sessions, and I've got a website. I don't know how I could share it, but I do have a website. If you go, I do also have a Google business profile. So if you go, just search my name, Asisithi Sejosengoe Psychologist. My Google profile will show up together with my contact details as well as my website. So I think that would be the best way, just to simplify it. Or my contact details are there. So when you do call or send an email, it is received by my assistant and then filtered through to me. But when you send an email, I receive it directly, but together with my assistant, we both receive it at the same time. So if you've got confidential information you want to communicate, it would be best that you don't send it via an email. Rather have us engage together directly on a phone call. So yeah. Oh, there it is.
I see. We have it on our platform. Our IT
Yes,
is working with us, all right, so we can
yes.
see your
So
contact
everything is
details.
there.
Okay,
Everything.
okay. No, 100%. Asi, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for the knowledge that you are imparting with us. We hope that the people who are watching on this platform will reach out to you. We will also endeavor to share this video on our YouTube platform and on our Facebook group. It's a public group, but it's not a page, it's a group. People opt in, and we'll maybe tag your page there as well. So yeah, I would like to thank you for your time. And before we close, I do want us to make an announcement about an initiative that my colleague Umandilake is heading up in Joburg. So I'm sitting in Cape Town. Mandilake is sitting in Joburg. On the 1st of October, they have Daddy and I, all right, or Daddy and Child Play Day at the Johannesburg Zoo on the 1st of October. That's our first activity as the fathers that would
Love
like us
it.
to go. So I think the last time we spoke with Mandilak, he had about 6 to 10 fathers that said, yes, we're coming. Of course, numbers are limited because we don't want to pass and stuff like that. It's just a manageable number. But if people are interested, they can hop on here. I'm also hoping to have the same setup, Daddy and I, in Cape Town, Milnerton area, but a date is to be confirmed, right? Then our next conversation um, uh, will be around language, culture, heritage, right? But that conversation will get other people like you to come and share with us the issue. You mentioned it in terms of reading and language and all those things. The ask is that which language should your child speak at home? You can't control school. School is maybe usually English, but at home, I want my child to learn my home language. Let's park it there, but it's a conversation for another day. I say thank you so much. And to all the rest of the people who are watching, thank you for your time. And I will see you in our next vodcast conversation on iFather Figure initiative. Thank you, Enkosi kakhulu.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the invite. Bye, guys.